Welcome to another one of our how-to videos. We're going to plant a tree today. It's an alder. I'd love to be able to show it you right now, but the lads are on the way back from the nursery with it, so it hasn't actually landed yet. But when we go outside in a minute, it'll be here to show you. We're between October and February, so it's a lovely time of year to be able to plant. There are many different ways of planting a tree. However, this is one of our favoured methods. It's always worked for us. Have a look on the internet, give us a ring. There's other ways of going about it, but we've always found the manner that we're going to show you in a minute to be a very successful way of going about it. I hope it's of use to you. I'll finish my brew and we'll hopefully the lads will be back and we'll see you out there. First of all, we need to make sure it has a really good thick rootstock on it. As you can see here, we've got some good structural roots, but more importantly, lots and lots of thin fibrous roots. And they're the feeder roots, they're the roots that ultimately feed the tree. So that's what it obviously needs to get going. It's very much a multi-stem tree here. Now, I'd like a clean stem and then a canopy. So shortly, we'll prune off these lower branches, but we'll show you how to do that. Right, so the next thing to do obviously is to dig your hole. Always a good idea to dig your hole before you get the tree out the bag, as we don't want these roots drying off or desiccating, as the correct term is. We've dug a reasonable size hole, quite a snug fit. We're in quite a soily location here, so the sides of the hole are nice and rough. If you're in a clay location, still plant your tree, absolutely fine, but just make sure that the sides of the hole aren't smooth or glazed. Just give them a quick jag up with the side of your spade. So as the roots get going, they're not turning on the side of the smooth clay, they've got something to catch on and start heading out. Right, so to put the tree in the hole, reasonably straightforward you'd think, but there's a couple of small little things you can do just to make sure that your tree gets a really good start. Ensure that the roots are in the hole and they're not touching the side of the hole, i.e. they're going to go round and round. So the other thing to remember is we always plant at something called nursery height. Nursery height is exactly what it says it is. It's the height it was planted in the nursery. We don't want to put it all the way at the bottom and then the soil up the main stem, and we don't want the top of the roots showing. So roughly work out where you are, and that's the height it needs to be. This hole's a little bit deep, so we can put a little bit of compost in the bottom. Check with height, we're not so far off there, and then we can fill it up with some soil. As you're filling it up with the soil and a little bit of compost, it's always a good idea to give the tree just a little shake. As you give it a shake, obviously all the soil's filling in the gaps. We will stamp on it after to compact it all, but we want to make sure that the soil is nice and snug and around the roots. As you can see there, we've obviously done a reasonable job because it's holding itself up as it is. We'll carry on filling it up. And then just a quick squash down. Nothing too exciting, just nice and firm. It doesn't matter if there's the odd little pebble or two in there, it doesn't really do any harm. If anything, it's, helps with the drainage. Right, so as I said earlier, I'd like this tree to have a stem and a nice round canopy. So what I'm going to do is prune off these lower branches to the height that I'd like it. Now then, we can just of course snip them off like that. All that's going to do is create a dead peg or a strange tuft of branches. But if you look closely, you can almost see, if we look for those rings, which are a little bit like the rings on your finger, if you will, where you can just nip it off just to the outside of those rings, and the tree will naturally heal over that. So here's a little tip. If you look at your secateurs, there's two sides. You've got a completely smooth side, and then you've got the lip, if you will. Often on a good pair of secateurs, that lip will almost tell you where to prune to. So if you always prune with the lip to the tree, it will stop you pruning too far in or too far out. Okay, so there are several ways of staking a tree. You can guy them underground, you can use a single stake, a double stake, an angled stake. There's many ways of going about it. Here we're in quite a windy location. We've got the west coast just over there, and we're up on the top of a brow, so things up here do take a bit of a beating. I am a fan, personally, and there's many ways of doing it, of 2 stakes with a crossbar, which you'll see as we go on. The other option, of course, is just a single stake next to the tree. I'm not a big fan of that because we had a lovely root ball down there, didn't we, with loads of really good fibrous roots on. What we don't want to be doing is driving the stake through that. I'm also a fan, and this is the preferred method, of staking low, not high. When you stake high and the tree is supported here, it's great, nothing's going to come to any harm, but as the wind comes, the tree isn't really doing any moving or any flexing. And we need the tree to move and flex because we need it to be a little bit stressed and a little bit panicked because we want it to go, we need to put roots out, we need to be stable. When we stake low down, say here, the wind comes and the tree's wobbling around a little bit there. It's still held good and tight, but what that does also is it creates something called root flare, as you can see on the tree behind you. This is root flare or buttress roots. As you can see, we've got good structural roots heading off out there rather than a straight stick into the ground. Root flare is a sign that the roots are really getting out there, becoming good and strong and structural, and make for a tree that will last a lot longer. So that's the posts knocked in, good and firm, and we've got the cross brace. I like to use these ties, this tying method, which involves a nice soft rubber pad which goes up against the tree. Obviously doesn't create too much damage, the tree's not rubbing on a piece of wood. And the other thing we've done here, which is again just a silly little thing, the prevailing wind is from this direction, blowing that way, so the tree is always going to get pushed against the brace or the tie. That's inevitable, it's always going to happen. But what you can do, just a silly little thing, is make sure that the tie, or the worst of it, is on the wind side. So as the wind blows, it's just pulling a little bit against the tie rather than pushing up hard and being rubbed excessively on the pad. So we've got a nice pad there to protect the tree against the wooden brace, and we've got some strapping here to help strap the tree. I'm a firm believer that you should allow the tree to have as much movement as possible while still remaining obviously nice and firm and staked. You can, when you get these pads, buy the proper actual webbing that comes with them. I find that it can be a bit stiff and a bit hard, especially in cold weather, and can often rub the cambium and damage the outer layer of the tree here. It doesn't last quite as long, but of course you can change it regularly, about every 6-8 months or so. I like to use a piece of bicycle inner tube. It's nice and strong, it's soft and it's flexible, and just allows the tree that little bit of movement whilst minimising any damage. So there we have the bracing on. All we've got to do now is pull the strap tight, not too tight, obviously as you can see there, there's a bit of play. So if we just firmly hold the tree in, pull that tight, and there we go. Not too tight that it's going to strangle the tree, but tight enough so obviously it's got a firm hold. That's about right. And then we'll just put another fencing staple in, and that's it. One thing with trees is competition, and actually grass can be quite a competitor with the tree. The grass gets growing up around the base of the tree, and in a rural position like this you can get mice and voles who absolutely love the sweet sugars in the sap, or the underneath the bark there, if you will. So the best thing to do to minimise this competition is if you put a piece of old Hessian sack around the base, like so. That can help prevent the grass growing up, and then a bit of old wood chip, quite thick around the base, not too deep, and that will help prevent the grass grow up. Another thing, especially in rural situations, is people plant the tree, the grass grows up around it, they then get the strimmer out, strim round the tree, inevitably catch the bark, and that's where you see the damage around the bottom and bad scarring. It just stops the nutrients getting up the tree and such like, whereas if you can do just a simple thing like that, it can help prevent these things from happening. Okay, so there we go, one tree planted. At Treeco, that's how we do it. We found that to be a very successful method of planting. Something just to have a quick think about though is if you're planting in an urban environment and you're stoning up to the bottom of a tree, or maybe flagging round it as part of a landscaping feature, if you will, you've still got to be able to make sure that you're getting the water down to the roots for the tree to survive. A good way of doing that, or this is what we use, is something called a watering ring, which is a flexible pipe with soak away holes in. We place that round the tree and connect it, bury to the top of the drain there, if you will, and that's where the water goes in. So if you can imagine, that's buried in the bottom of the hole there, and that's the best way of solving that matter. So trees can be happily planted in urban environments with the correct methods. Hope that was reasonably informative, and thank you very much for watching.